is this still going on? This verse been going for way too long. If you ain't blind, you can see that this is wrong, and I won't comply. Not me, no way. I may be.
Good morning, everyone. Lots going on as usual. Do you remember when they froze bank accounts without due process or charges? Do you remember Tamara Lich and Pat King spending more than 50 and 150, I think, days in jail? Do you remember the Prime Minister saying, do we tolerate these people about the unvaccinated? Do you remember the Toronto Star running a front page that said, we hope the unvaccinated die? Do you remember all of that? Do you remember doxing the Freedom convoy donators? Do you remember the guy who hacked them didn't have any legal trouble at all? No charges, no headlines about it. He was a very, very disturbed young man, and he put a very weird video out claiming credit for doxing the truckers, and then he printed out the addresses and names and how much they donated, and then people in Canada started putting it up on telephone poles, and people started harassing these people. Isn't that incredible? I think that's absolutely incredible. Do you know what happened yesterday? Yesterday, a man yelled at Chrystia Freeland and said some mean words, and every liberal and his dog came out of the woodwork to denounce this attack. I didn't hear one person say one word against any of the whole list I read about what happened to us. And now they want Canadians to think that that gentleman, and I'm not convinced that whole thing wasn't staged, by the way. Yesterday, the point of my show was the Liberals provoke people in order to get a response that they were hoping for, a violent response maybe, but not necessarily. Any response will do, and they'll use that to further crack down and remove freedoms or whatever else, an excuse for further legislation to restrict, curtail Canadians' charter rights. And that's what they've been doing for the last 7 years, and this is no different. Yesterday, saying some mean words to Chrystia Freeland is the worst possible thing that any Canadian could possibly ever do. So all of the Liberal people, all of the assets, I'm going to show you what they've said. And it's so interesting to me that we can have our leaders musing about the unvaccinated and how do we tolerate them, etc. And nobody says a word about it. And yet, if somebody gets upset at the same people who are not being held accountable and sending billions of dollars outside of the country while the country is suffering, that's a problem. That's the thing that the Liberal government is protecting us from? Oh, I don't think so. We're going to talk about MAID, medically assisted dying. We're going to talk about EVs. We're going to talk about Western University and their vax mandate, and all of that is to come. So let's get started. If you want to support the show, head over to CanadaPoly.com. You can check out the forms. They're free. You can do a one-time payment or a monthly subscription. You can check out my book if you're interested in that. You can sign up for Kitchen Table Talks, which will be back soon. And you can click on this Amazon link here. If you shop at Amazon and you want to support the show, you can check out Canada Report as well if you're interested in the links before I get to forming them into the show that I do here. Here's Chrystia Freeland's face. This is a meme waiting to be made. After that gentleman accosted her, she was grinning and smiling and walking into the elevator. And here's the close-up of the video if you're watching. Quite an interesting response. Some women say, oh yeah, I use this all the time to diffuse difficult situations. And don't misunderstand. I'm not saying that I agree with what this gentleman did or the way he did it. But in the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, we have a right to express ourselves. We're not allowed to physically assault somebody. We're not allowed to punch somebody or anything to that effect. But name calling, as far as I understand, is fine. Swearing at somebody, it's dicey. It might be verbal assault, but I doubt that you're going to do jail time for it. I doubt you'd even have a problem. Police might just say, hey, cool it, buddy. Now, if that's the Deputy Prime Minister, maybe a little bit more of a problem, which begs questions about the whole situation, doesn't it? But all of that aside, fundamentally, I don't necessarily agree with what he did, but I think he has a right to express himself the way he sees fit, so long as he's not harming another person. And saying mean words to the Deputy Prime Minister, a Deputy Prime Minister who froze bank accounts of Canadians for donating to a freedom cause, or a freedom convoy, a protest that they supported, without charges or any kind of due process, I think one is a bigger crime than the other, and swearing at that person is the lesser of the crimes. Okay, and yes, I think Chrystia Freeland is doing things that she knows is not legal, not right, not allowed under the structure of laws in Canada. But she is a WEF person, and so is she running the country as the Canadian citizens want, or is she running the country as her and her WEF buddies Justin Trudeau and Jagmeet Singh want? I don't know. Right? Rowan says Chrystia Freeland's confronter, Elliot McDavid, in a video scrubbed from TikTok, appears to have also gone after and is not a fan of Pierre Poilievre, who's clearly less than enthused, corroborated by Jenny Bryn. And so I've got a video here of the same guy attacking Pierre Poilievre. This is last week, I guess. Almost happened to Pierre by the same guy too. So, I don't know if this is the video. The video itself has been scrubbed from TikTok. I thought I had it, but it could just be a picture of the video, and I thought that was the plaything. If I do get it, I'll post it. This is Andy Lee, and she's corroborating the same story. It appears the man who confronted Chrystia Freeland, Elliot McDavid, also may have done something similar to Pierre Poilievre. The video was scrubbed from TikTok. Anyone able to find other evidence of this, or perhaps we can get Pierre Poilievre or Chris Watkington to confirm. So that's interesting to me. If this person is genuinely upset with Chrystia Freeland and genuinely upset with Pierre Poilievre, who does he align with, right? Who is he, et cetera, et cetera. There are people, and I've got some tabs to show you at the end, people who are saying, who is this guy? Who does he support? Why is he coming out and attacking Chrystia Freeland, et cetera, et cetera. Laurie Goldstein, he says Chrystia Freeland's latest target is the latest target of public threats, intimidation against women in Canadian politics. The Rachel Gilmore thing, I think, was completely self-made and fabricated. She wrote a story about how she called the police, and the police didn't take her seriously enough. And I don't know that that's news, Rachel. Try again. Anyway, Jim says, there was no threat. There was a loud, angry, obnoxious man who expressed his anger at the woman who froze the bank accounts of peaceful protests, was positively giddy when she announced it. The man was out of line, but the real question is why there's so much anger at the Liberals. Yes, that's a good question and a good way to come at this. It's really interesting that the press is coming at this and saying, yes, Chrystia Freeland, now people are yelling at her. Yeah, they've been yelling at her for a while. She's a reporter who's in charge of our money and is the deputy PM. She's in charge of finance, right, and is the deputy PM. And as far as I understand it, stakeholder capitalism is much closer to communism than it is capitalism. Communism with a nice capitalist flair in the title. This is the same tweet that Laurie said last time, and here's another response to it. Threats, right? And then the person says, what's worse, having your bank account frozen or mean words, coerced vaccination or mean words, loss of income when your business is forced to close or mean words? How about having an entire battalion of Toronto police on horseback to shut you down while Costco sells its hot dogs in the food court? Right? And that's, of course, Adam Skelly. And we saw that happen. And we all sat around going, safe and effective, right? It's just 2 more weeks to flatten the curve. I'm sure that they're going to open it up. The government cares about you. Andy Lee says, there are abusive jackasses of all stripes in our country. And after I watched you post truckers' phone numbers and addresses and encouraged people to call them and harass them and their businesses, I realized you were one of them. So this is Sandy Graciano, doesn't matter who she is, and she's getting in on the whole people are mean and mean words are bad thing. And she says, the fact that there are abusive jackasses of all stripes in the country does not mean that we're dumb enough to fall for defense like this. The whole country saw it, and she's linking to the video again. And Andy Lee brings the receipts. This is the woman who is saying this is a terrible thing that happened in our politics when that man said mean things to Chrystia Freeland. And the same person says, this is a great site identifying all the businesses whose trucks are occupying Ottawa. I only counted 10 from Western Ontario. And then here's another one. They include lots of phone numbers of the businesses that own the trucks for what it's worth. They'd like the publicity for sure. Here's one from my area, Bill's Trucking in Abbotsford, 8 million in revenue, phone number and websites and image, now occupying our national capital with a group that wants to blah, 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 blah. So she felt totally fine going after people's livelihoods and posting people's addresses, business addresses, etc. But if somebody says to Chrystia Freeland, hey, do you remember when you did that to me? When you harmed me personally by your actions in government? Do you remember when I was harmed by you, Chrystia? F you, you're not welcome here. That's wrong, apparently. You're not allowed to respond like that. That's not okay. But you're allowed to encourage other people to destroy someone's business for having the audacity, the gall to protest a Trudeau. Unbelievable. Here's Dean as well. The Ottawa media loved it when an Ontario lefty mayor used profanity directed at protesters, but don't you dare swear at Miss Freeland. Power in politics quotes, and I don't know which mayor it is. Oh, Peterborough. She says, I would do it again. Peterborough Mayor Diane Theron says of her profanity-laced response to those involved with a QAnon-inspired protest in her city. You can't reason with unreasonable people. Well, not when you swear at them. Do you think that this person was convincing Miss Freeland of something other than the fact that she wasn't welcome in that place where he was? And he said Alberta, but do you think he was making a persuasive argument? You can't reason with unreasonable people. Right. The thing is, he was just frustrated and angry, and having a swear word laden tirade against QAnon people. What does QAnon have to do with Canada other than the fact that Q said it was going to be worldwide? I don't think Canada was mentioned too many times. Justin Trudeau, certainly not. So it's very interesting. Maybe he was mentioned, but I can't even remember at this point in time. It was long ago. So it's interesting. And I don't know if this was a 2020 tweet or when it was. I can't see it. It doesn't say the name. Or like the original tweet here, it doesn't say when it was put out. But still, all of these people feel just fine treating anybody they deem crazy conspiracy theorists as crazy conspiracy theorists. They'll swear at them, they'll remove them, they'll ignore them, they'll do anything they possibly can to derail them. But if somebody gets mad at Chrystia Freeland and swears at her, and again, I'm not convinced that this is even a legit event that wasn't staged, the whole liberal establishment goes off the rails. It's incredible. CTV News runs a report about it. Deputy PM Freeland responds to harassment incident in Alberta. Unbelievable, right? Unbelievable. I don't remember the news articles talking about the frozen bank accounts and how terrible that is and how impactful and negative that is and how somebody somewhere is responsible for this, and maybe the finance minister who allowed the banks to do this should bear some responsibility. I don't remember all of that being run at all, ever, because they didn't, right? So Chrystia Freeland being accosted by a gentleman gets news reports, but Chrystia Freeland impacting and damaging people's businesses through terrible, terrible policies in Ottawa, nothing. Chrystia Freeland and Justin Trudeau's RCMP and or weaponized police forces trampling people and with horses. It happened, it didn't happen, who's to say, right? That's, I believe, the interim chief, is it Bell? Chief Bell, I think. And he just says, oh yeah, everybody got up, it was fine. Trampled with a horse or, knocked over by a horse and tickled with their hooves, whatever. Some people who are trampled by horses experience it differently. So, right? John, this is just a random person who says, I don't care if you hate, despise, revile Justin Trudeau, Chrystia Freeland, or the Queen of Denmark, you treat them with civility even in your disagreement, and you do not under any circumstances threaten or intimidate them. I didn't see any threat. And a whole bunch of people are saying, can you be very specific? What threat was made other than being angry with her and swearing at her, which is an expression of frustration and anger and frustration? I didn't see a threat. I didn't see, I'm going to hurt you. I didn't see, I'm going to grab you and do something to you. He was just, get out of here. Get out of here. You're not welcome here. They came right up to the elevator. There was no threat as far as I saw. Anyway, this guy says, what threat was made? I missed it. Here's a fact, though. Freeland threatened to freeze my bank account for sending $100 to a trucker. Can you imagine being a Canadian and fearing your government? I had to check my account for days. It was completely unacceptable and cruel. Yeah, I went to a sandwich shop on the day that they froze the accounts, and the first I tried to pay with my debit card, and it was declined for no reason. I thought, that's really strange. I texted my wife and I said, my card was just declined. I have cash, but my card was just declined, so that's not so good. I'm going to call the bank in a minute and find out what happened, but it seems like maybe I've been caught up in this whole thing. And I called the bank and they said, no, everything's fine. You can use your account. No, we didn't freeze anything. I said, okay, well, I just got declined. Can you tell me why? And they had a reason for it. And I thought, all right, well, I'm going to go and try again. And if it works, that's wonderful. And it did. But yeah, having a situation where you're honestly concerned that because you do a random YouTube show that nobody watches, you're one of 200 people or something like that. YouTube is giving me 32 likes, okay, and about 60 to 100 views. It's unbelievable because I know that there's more people than that watching. But still, you're one of 100 people maybe, right? And they keep trying to tick my numbers down. And I think they think that I care. Anyway, regardless, let's get back to this. Terry says, so far I've counted 10 liberal ministers calling out the redneck who yelled obscenities at Freeland, but they don't say a peep about the racist pig they hired who teaches people to hate Jews. Right? Laith Marouf? Right? Ha! Yeah, great comparison. Who poses the biggest threat to our society? A nobody or a paid liberal terrorist? The dude, the Laith Marouf guy, had $600,000 given to him for anti-racism training, which is racism training. This guy's the problem? No, the liberal government is the problem. That is the problem. Here's Tasha. This is John Charest's campaign chief, and she says, one of the co-chairs, she says, all politicians should denounce this. It doesn't matter what party you are. Abuse and intimidation are not part of the job description or our democracy. When somebody behaves in a way like Chrystia Freeland has, people are going to get angry. And if they get angry and they yell at that person, that's not bigger news than what that person did to cause Canadians, who are normally docile, very happy people, to act like this is the bigger story. And the news is purposely trying to create a narrative where being angry at somebody for completely destroying your country, Chrystia Freeland, is not tolerable. And having a response to that, not tolerable. It's incredible. So that's John Charest's co-chair, a liberal. Here's John Charest. He says, this is gross intimidation. People are angry. I get it, but this is dangerous behavior. It cannot be normalized. Every politician or every political leader must speak out and condemn this. Canada Poly. So I really think they're going to Joe Biden the CPC. I really do. I'm sorry that other people don't like that I think this, but I saw a news article yesterday talking about how Pierre Poilievre is a hair's breadth away from taking the Conservative leadership. I hope so, because, well, maybe, I don't know. It will fracture the CPC if Poilievre doesn't win. And that'll be interesting to watch, but it'll take 15 years to sort out. So crazy. And maybe that's better anyway. But anyway, John Charest is certainly not a conservative. And Anti-Grifter says this is almost exactly the same type of messaging wimpy Aaron O'Toole used last year when some pebbles were thrown at Trudeau's bus. You can condemn the actions, but people are angry, yet, and they are angry for a reason. Make the Liberals address that. Don't vote for this plant. And of course they mean the Liberal planted Jean Charest in the Conservative Party leadership race. Speaking of Aaron O'Toole, he says, this behavior towards Minister Freeland is the latest example of disturbing harassment of political leaders. There can be no liberty without order, says Trudeau. Political leaders of all stripes must denounce this type of unacceptable conduct. See, all the Liberals crawling out of the woodwork to get on board. Jason Kenney, Liberal, he says, the verbal harassment and threats directed at Minister Freeland during her visit to Alberta yesterday were reprehensible. If you disagree with the politician, by all means exercise your right to protest, but screaming, threatening language and physical intimidation cross the line. Physical intimidation? He's a man. He's big. He walked in a hallway. I didn't see any physical intimidation. He wasn't going like this. He wasn't like punching the air. He wasn't saying, Miss Freeland, I'm going to be punching the air, and if you're in the way, that's your fault. That didn't happen, right? So it's one of those things that all of these people are addressing these issues as if these issues are the only thing happening. This is a vacuum. This person was totally fine and his life was going just fine. Nothing happened with this person's life, and Chrystia Freeland has not impacted this person's life, and then he just attacked her. Okay, maybe you've got something to say, but there's a whole lot of context with what Chrystia Freeland's done to Canadians, with the rhetoric in the news, with all sorts of other things, and nobody, not one of these people is addressing any of that. They're saying, oh yeah, well, this guy doing this is terrible. Bullshit. Absolute nonsense. Excuse my French. Catherine McKenna, a failed climate minister, a failed infrastructure minister. Where is that money? I wish we knew, right? Or the receipts? Something, Catherine, please? No. She says any politicians who deal in anger and conspiracies and egg on those folks while playing footsies with far-right activists who want an armed overthrow of the government need to be called out, including and especially by their parties. Looking at you, Pierre Poilievre. Ahmed Hassan said the Conservatives dance with white supremacists. Catherine McKenna says these folks are playing footsies with white far-right activists. What is with the dancing and the footsies? What? They can't name the far-right activists. There is no far-right activist group. If there was a far-right activist group, they'd say, this group is a far-right activist group and we're going to shut them down. They had what they thought was a far-right activist group in Diagolon. But it's a joke. It's a joke, and the joke's on them because they're idiots. But they went so hell to leather because they thought they had it. They thought they had, this is the thing that's going to justify all of the fear-mongering. This is the scapegoat. They thought they had it, and they don't. But I just think it's funny, the rhetoric of dancing with white supremacists and playing footsie with alt-right people. Are alt-right people known to play footsie? Like, I watched American History X, man. Those guys were playing footsie. Right? Like, Jeepers Creepers. I don't know if that's alt-right. That's kind of Nazis, but still, right? Neo-Nazis, but blah. I wasn't seeing a lot of footsies in that movie. Tell me if you've seen neo-Nazis, alt-right groups or anybody like that dancing with white supremacists or playing footsies with alt-right groups. I'd love to know. Send a link. Ahmed Hassan says, the harassment and threats directed to my friend and colleague Chrystia Freeland yesterday are completely unacceptable. No person should feel unsafe in their home, workplace, or anywhere else in Canada. She wasn't at home. She wasn't at home. She was leaving someplace in Alberta. Maybe if she was in her home city, that's what Ahmed meant. But that doesn't make sense. If I'm in my home city and at Walmart, I'm not at home, right? Being harassed at home. If some person says, hey, well, how come you're not wearing a mask? Blah, 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 blah. Which was allowed by this government, by the way, and encouraged by this government, by the way, right? So having Chrystia Freeland harassed, that's a problem for Ahmed. But having Canadians harassed, not a problem. At home? She wasn't at home. Jim says, how do you think Canadians felt when Ms. Freeland seized and froze their bank accounts, then made her gleeful press conference about it? The loudmouth was wrong to go off on her like that, but don't act like your government hasn't invited anger and hostility. I think they've actively fostered it. I think they've actively encouraged it and raised it like Audrey 2, right? Like from Little Shop of Horrors. Anyway, Marco Mendocino also says there is absolutely no place in our country for the harassment, intimidation, and threatening conduct that Ms. Freeland and her staff were subject to last night. This kind of behavior needs to be called out and condemned by everyone, regardless of their political affiliation. And Vivian says, tell us, Marco and Chrystia, you've both been silent on the Laith Maroof fiasco. How do you contain your outrage? What happened yesterday to Chrystia is wrong, duh, but that guy wasn't on the government payroll. You guys line the pockets of a notorious Jew hater, and you're silent? It doesn't matter so much that he hated Jews specifically. It's just that he was a hateful and is a hateful person, was able to access this money. We paid him tax dollars, and he's a grifter. And they're trying to say that this non-government guy, maybe, if it's not a setup, is more of a problem than the government-funded one. Interesting. Not one of the Jason Kenney or John Charest or Aaron O'Toole or any of the supposed conservative people who are responding to this nonsense are bringing any of this up. Note that. It's notable. Here's some people saying we've got to find out who this guy was. And here's Catherine McKenna. Sorry, first, before we get to that, Catherine McKenna saying she wants Pierre Poilievre to denounce this. She wants him to send the tweet. She wants him to say the line. She wants him to denounce all of this stuff that's happened. And if he doesn't, then it's your fault too, right? So I think maybe a setup. But Catherine McKenna says, 45 minutes ago, Pierre Poilievre tweeted against Trudeau and carbon pricing and has tweeted absolutely nothing, calling out the attack on Chrystia Freeland, a colleague in the House of Commons. It's beyond appalling. Conservative friends, I suggest you get on this fast. And Bushels per Acre says, if Pierre bows to the mob and condemns frustrated Canadians, we know they're all in it together. This is also looking like more of a setup as it goes on to try to vilify Pierre. It looks like a setup. It really does look like a setup. I don't think there's any escaping that. The longer this goes on, and the more they use this as ammunition, the more it looks like they manufactured it. Really. Bushels per Acre again is responding to Travis Toe's Toes says, it's no secret Chrystia Freeland and I do not see eye to eye politically, but what she experienced was frankly disgusting and completely unacceptable. This is not the Alberta I know and love. This isn't the Grand Prairie I know and love. And Bushell says, apologies for every single person that died or was injured from forced vaccination before you demand an apology for dog shit politicians. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Nailed it. Here's questions about the guys, the person who's accosting Freeland and his actual viability. Who is this person? So Bushels again says, someone has to know that guy from Grand Prairie somehow. Let's find out if it was a setup. Firstly, 1, why does Freeland have no security? 2, how is his timing so impeccable? 3, why is he wearing a torn but clean wife beater? 4, why does Freeland smile after? And 5, who posted the original video? So there's lots of questions, etc. Here's a woman who calls out a British politician on air, and I thought this was funny. This
plan for jobs has
this is how you do it, in my opinion. The Canadian one's a little abrasive. This one, she gets her point across. It's just 23 seconds. Bear with me. Here we go.
That plan for jobs has protected.
Are you going to do
businesses.
anything about the ambulances waiting and the people dying out? Well, don't you think 12 years is long enough?
Yes, and we
12
are
years,
taking...
you've done bugger all about it. People have died and all you've done is nothing.
That's my childhood. I mean, not really. You've done bugger all about it and people have died. That not that part. But if I was getting yelled at by my mom, that's how it sounded. So, and he looked like a schoolboy who'd just been dressed down, right, by a angry headmistress. So that's how you do it. I'm not saying that the guy had a good strategy. I'm saying he had a right to speak his mind, and he had a right to express himself the way he wanted to. And he wasn't violent. He was very aggressive, maybe, but he wasn't violent. And having this politicians all jump on board and say, I can't believe the violence, I can't believe this, I can't believe this, seems like they're manufacturing this. I don't believe it. There are issues. There are real, valid issues that have been brought up over and over. There have been convoys and millions of dollars spent to bring this to the government's attention, and they do nothing except vilify their opponents. It is despicable what they've done. It is absolutely despicable, and they will keep doing it if we allow them. And they're doing it with our tax dollars pumping into a media that doesn't work for us anymore. They work for the government and underpins their narrative. That's what happens. I'm sorry. That's what's happened. That's where we're at. And Theo Fleury makes a really good point, and I think this is going to be the title, or something to this effect is going to be the title. The communists are doing what they are really good at, playing victims, playing the victim role. Sick bastards. I think that's exactly what's happening. They are creating a situation where they look like the victim while they are the aggressor in every measurable way. And we are in a situation, well, here's Tom Anderson, and he says, if you live in a country where Tamara Lich is arrested on a Canada-wide warrant by homicide cops for bouncy castle infractions and kept in jail, and where privileged celeb Lisa LaFlamme becomes an icon of victimhood, your country needs a moral compass recalibration. Wendy's, which is actually owned by Bell Media is the one who fired LaFlamme, as far as I understand it. But Wendy's changed their Wendy icon on Twitter to have gray hair. She wasn't fired because she had gray hair. That's not why she was fired. And the whole Lisa LaFlamme thing looks, again, to be a manufactured victimhood plant, manufactured side distraction. And this whole thing is supposed to not have us think about the terrible actions of our government, this whole thing. The victimhood of Lisa LaFlamme, the victimhood of Chrystia Freeland, the aggression towards female reporters. It's to make it so that you can't call people out who have done measurable harm. And that's a problem. It's a big, big problem because it's false. There are valid concerns that should be brought forward to the government, and they should be accountable to the people. They should have to respond to these grievances. But instead, they're saying, if you talk about this in this way, you're a terrorist or you're the problem. Claiming victimhood It's right out of the communist playbook. Andrew Lawton, let's talk about Western University and vax mandates. They still have them on. Yesterday was a big protest. Andrew Lawton was there, and so were a few people. Lawton got up and did a bit of a speech. He says, hundreds of students and parents are here before the start of the Enough is Enough demonstration protesting Western's booster mandate. So that's pretty interesting. And he says, again, Andrew Lawton, different tweet, donors and prospective donors are exempt from Western University's 3-dose vaccine mandate. Turns out if you're cutting the university a check, science says COVID passes you by. It's just like if you're in a restaurant and you're sitting at your table eating, COVID knows. So it's going to leave you alone. You can take your mask off. But if you stand up to go to the bathroom, COVID knows, game on, and it can get you. Right? Ridiculous. If you've got enough money, you can just buy your way out of it. Yeah, COVID is a poor man's disease because rich men it doesn't exist for. And to know that, there's one guy specifically who talks about that. I can't remember his name, but I've shared his videos before. So very, very interesting stuff. The last one, Western is barricading the campus. What a great way to welcome the kids back to Frosh Week. This was at 9:30 in the morning. They closed the roads. Right? And they put out a statement talking about how they didn't want the protest hijacked by people who, this is it here. Yeah, I'll read you the statement. It seems like one heck of a justification for ignoring their students. I don't know that this protest is going to achieve what the students hoped. This is the statement by Western. We are aware that students are gathering today to peacefully protest the university's vaccine and masking requirements for the fall. We respect students' rights to peacefully protest on campus, and we are supporting them to do so safely. It has come to our attention that groups not associated with our campus community are looking to use this peaceful protest as a platform to express their own grievances. We are concerned that this event will be used for reasons other than what our students have planned, creating a risk of it becoming disruptive and potentially dangerous. Right? So it's not the students that are dangerous. Other people might come here and then create a risk and might be potentially dangerous. So we're going to shut down the roads. Our fall health and safety plans have one goal in mind: to ensure a healthy community so that we can protect in-person learning throughout the school year. Masks don't do that. Vaccines don't do that. There's no evidence that either does that. So how you can say something that sounds really good but means nothing. That's one of those examples. Okay. We know this decision has spurred significant conversation. Controversy might be a better word there. And as a center of higher learning, we encourage the exchange of differing viewpoints and ideas while valuing constructive feedback. We value the exchange of ideas. We're just going to ignore your idea and do what we want anyway. We are not, however, they say, in favor of actions that risk the safety of peaceful protesters or others who happen to be on campus in our neighboring communities. We are coordinating with community partners, including London Police Services, to ensure that our students' event can proceed safely. And so they say, due to road closures, vehicle and building access is restricted until further notice. And that was at 8:07 a.m. So pretty wild. Oh, you want to protest? Yeah, well, we'll just make it so you can't drive in here. Right? It's, again, a valid protest, a valid complaint, and instead of legitimizing it and dealing with it in good faith, the university is deflecting and saying, okay, we'll let them do their little protest, and we'll move on, and we hope it's not unsafe, and we've called police, and we will shut it down if we decide that it gets too rowdy. Wild. Medically assisted dying is a concerning thing, and this is just a meme I came across. Actually, I think this is Human in Canada, or Humankind Canada 2.0. He's got these meme things that are, I thought, pretty effective. They're very kind of bite-sized, and it says, he's got 31 of them at least. It says, Dan the Skeptical Canadian has thoughts on this. This is the Pierre Poilievre thing. Sorry, I thought it was a medically assisted dying thing. The medically assisted dying meme is kill yourselves, it's for the environment. And I had more to say on that, but I thought I had more tabs. So apologies. That one should have probably been scrubbed. Apologies about that, everyone. Moving on. Food. Excuse me. This is where climate targets get interesting, says the food professor. A report released this month suggests Canadians must cut meat and dairy consumption by 50% by 2050 to reach federal climate targets. The report was published by both MoveTheWorld.ca and Navius Research. Both World Animal Protection Canada and Navius Research have received funding from the Trudeau government. You can find the reports here. So if they are trying to reduce dairy and meat consumption by 50%, by 2050, that's 25, 27, 28 years. That's not good, considering the increased population. Remember yesterday when I said Ontario's population has 14.4 million people, I think, as of 2021, I think that's the number. Although I thought we broke 15 million, but anyways, it doesn't matter. And they said by 2043 in the article that the Ontario population would go up to 23 point something million. And my concern then was housing and services. My concern now is they want to reduce dairy and meat consumption by 50% while increasing the population by a third. Holy smoke! Or by half, I guess, by 50% of the current population. 7,000 or 7 million more would be 21. So more than a third, more than half. Unbelievable. Sorry, I'm getting my math all wrong. It's early. I just think it's wild, and the math doesn't fit, and the math doesn't work, and nobody cares. Nobody cares. Some people care. They say, hey, look at this report. But it's so far out, it's so theoretical, that if you started going around saying, they're going to take away our milk and our meat, people already ignore it. If you say SDGs, you can see the film come over people's eyes. Right, Mark Friesen? You know what I'm talking about. I know what you're talking about. So it's really, really concerning when you see Trudeau funding these reports to say, yeah, the way to achieve these climate goals is to reduce the meat consumption by 50%. And so there you go. That's how you do it. And if you don't think they're going to try, well, I think you haven't been paying attention. Here is, thank you, Kinley, I think it was, sent this. But there, when I was talking about the Nova Scotia soda tax, I found out there's a BC soda tax, right? British Columbia soda tax. Notice to sellers of soda beverages. This was in 2021 that this was issued. Effective April 1st, 2021, soda beverages will no longer qualify for the exemption for food products for human consumption. PST will apply to all retail sales of soda beverages at a rate of 7%. If you sell soda beverages and are not already registered as a PST collector, you must register to collect and remit PST. Wow. So unbelievable that soda pop in Ontario is now taxed in Newfoundland, and it looks like they used kind of sneaky procedural tricks to bring in a tax on the soda, because usually if you're buying food for your family, that's not taxed at a provincial rate. You can get ready-made chickens and things like that, but tax-free peanut butter is supposed to be tax-free. There's certain things, milk, right? That's tax-free. So doing away with that status for that product is a very sneaky way of bringing in a soda tax. And I mean, 7% is not insignificant, right? Pretty wild. Danielle Smith says, is Justin Trudeau seriously hiring climate change enforcement officers? As Premier, we will not permit any federal climate cops to operate in Alberta by virtue of Alberta's Sovereignty Act. Here's the link to the job ad on Indeed. So there you go. There's a climate police making $75,000 in Canada. Scary, scary stuff. $75,000 a year. And yes, they are. And is Danielle Smith still the front runner? She believes in net zero. Pretty wild. Did you know Arthur Pawlowski is running for the Alberta Independent Party? Here's a rally. I'm not sure why this is all Chinese signature, and it's translated into Chinese as well. So I thought that was all very interesting. I don't know what to make of that. I don't know why. I don't know who this Lexi person is either. So apologies that I don't know so much. But here's Arthur giving a speech yesterday. It's 2 minutes. I'm not going to play it right now, but I thought it was a very interesting. I am playing it, looks like. I thought it was worthwhile that he wasn't interested in running for the UCP and Alberta Independence, etc. Very interesting stuff. What does that say about Alberta politics? I think that it's just as fraught as it always is, right? But much more so these days, really. Here's a lineup for charging EVs. It goes around a few blocks. It says, Bernie's tweets, this is a queue for EV charging points as the government shuts down and rations energy supplies. By October in the UK, a 400-mile charge will cost £149, that's about $300, and a tank of gas will be £50, that's about $100. Buyer's remorse? Stop laughing at the back. So it's a long line. It is a long line to charge up your electric vehicle, and that's pretty wild, right? Yesterday, the day before, I brought the cost to replace a battery for the Chevy Bolt, I think it is, yeah. And today I have the cost to replace a Tesla 3 battery. Okay, so here's John. He says everyone is talking about the cost of a Chevy. Oh, it's a Volt, not a Bolt. Sorry, the Chevy Volt battery. Here's the cost to replace a Tesla 3 battery in Canadian funds. That works out to be $21,569.61. In American funds, it's $13,900 even. So wild, the cost of the battery, and it's interesting. To me, how Canadians can be deluded into thinking it's cheaper than it is because they look at the American price. I've had people argue with me that it's not $20,000 to replace a battery and then link to the American Tesla form. And I thought, do you understand currency? Do I need to explain currency to you, or did you just miss that? I'm not sure where we're at. It's very interesting. So I don't know. I don't know how much more evidence needs to be given. An electric car is an interesting side project, but I don't know that it's going to replace, I don't know. I hope to goodness that it's not going to replace gas automobiles, because if it does, it is going to be only rich people driving, because after 3 years, nobody's going to be able to afford their cars anymore. Really. And blackouts will be, somebody was comparing to air conditioners, saying they said all the same things about air conditioners, and everybody's got an air conditioner now, and it's no big deal. If it works, fine. But I don't think that it works. I don't think it's an apples comparison to a gas car, even with a Tesla, because the more trips you make in a single trip without charging, the faster your battery drains. It doesn't work in cold. If you are on a highway frozen in place because of a snowstorm or something to that effect and your battery runs out, you're dead. You can't walk to you can't sit there and go, we've got about half an hour of fuel left, I'm going to walk to the gas station and get some fuel and get back here. You stay in the warm car type deal. There's none of that. You're dead. That's it. Sorry, man. That's it. So there's so many problems with this. And again, nobody cares. And nobody's even really exploring the problems. In fact, if you bring up a problem, they say, you're probably a racist against electric cars. And, there's a gulag for that. Not yet, but it's coming in Trudeau's Canada. Okay, this is the last story for today. John Mcafee had a lot, and I don't know, he was dead, and then he wasn't, and then he was dead again, and then he wasn't. So apparently he's alive again. So that's fun, right? John McAfee's kind of fun. But part of his being alive previously, it was well known that he had lots of body doubles. So, man, who knows? But it's super funny. He's in a Faraday cage, and he's saying there's people there doing some work. Well, here, just watch the video. Why not? Here we go. It's like a minute, 2 minutes maybe. But here's John McAfee's triumphant weird return.
People are asking what this cage of tin foil and metal is all about that's around me. It's a Faraday cage. A Faraday cage is a cage which emits no signal, and no signal can enter. And you can see here, it's all around, including the floor, all metal, and the ceiling. Why am I doing this? Why am I going to this trouble? Oh, in addition to the Faraday cage, we have an 8-channel scrambler, which you can see here, I hope, which prevents any signal from getting into this room or leaving this room, just in case the Faraday cage fails. Why am I doing this? Because I am an escaped slave.
I'll leave it there. I think that that's probably enough. He talks about how, well, I'll give it a little bit more. Okay.
A slave to the system that escaped, and I have a loud voice. You think you're not slaves, but you are. The 9-to-5 existence of your current lives is structured by the American industrial corporate complex, complicit with our government.
I have a really weird clip. I've got one more thing for you. Oh, sorry about the light behind me. I thought I was covering that. Apologies. I have one more weird clip for you. I'm going to get it right now. Hold on. I should have closed the door. Oh well. Anyway, John Mcafee was saying that the system enslaves you, and he's saying your 9-to-5 job enslaves you. Okay, fine. This digs into time itself, the calendar system. Here's a wild thing. Grab a calculator. Here, let's do it together. I'll grab a calculator. Let's do this. 365 days in a year, right? You know this? 364 days divided by 13 equals 28. If you had 13 months of 28 days, you would have 13 months, 364. 364 divided by 28, 28 days in a month, 13 months with 1 day left over. Why did they mess it around? Why did they mess with it, right? They messed with it to create a system where you don't even question the system. You just say that's time. Who could change time? Who could indeed, right? Check it out. It's wild. There's a little comedy sketch buried in the middle of this that I found as well. I've talked about this before, but with John Mcafee saying, oh, you're a slave to the system, I think a lot of people maybe won't understand what that means. Watch this little video. Watch it in double time. Super interesting. It will blow your socks off. It will blow your mind. All right. And that's enough out of me for today. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com. Check out CanadaReport.co. Check out Speaking Moistly and all the other stuff on there. Really sorry about the door thing. I hope the light wasn't too annoying because I didn't see it, most of it ever, like for this show. So apologies. I think I said everything. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.